Here's my student. All right, so today we are going to be continuing our space lesson and talking about the solar system. We are going to be talking just about the moon today. So we are going to read a story, but before we get started with that, we're going to fill out this chart that says the moon KWL. So what does KWL stand for? Well, these letters stand for know, want to know, and learned. So before we even read this story, we're going to be answering some of these questions. So what is something we already know about the moon?
It's in space.
Okay, it's in space. It is in, how do I spell space? Space. Who can help me with that? Okay. How do I spell space?
SPACE.
Ooh, I love how we remembered that CE at the end of the word. Great job. All right, what's something else that we know about the moon?
It has craters in it.
That's right, it does have craters. It has craters. Great. All right, I think we have space for one more. We can fit one more right here. What do we think? What else do we know about the moon?
It changes shape.
Oh, okay. It changes shape, right? Sometimes the moon looks a lot bigger and a lot smaller some days. It changes shape. These are some great things that we have already know about the moon. All right, so let's look at this part right here, want to know. So while you're reading this story or listening to this story, we're going to be thinking of what do we want to know from this?
Okay.
Okay, do we have any questions that we want to have answered?
How far away is the moon?
Ooh, good question. How far away is the moon? And notice that I've been adding punctuation to all of my sentences here. These are complete sentences. So how far away is the moon? So if I'm adding punctuation, what do we think is going to go at the end of this sentence?
Ooh, a question mark.
Good. We're asking a question. Question mark. Awesome. How far away is the moon? Do we have any other questions that we might want to have answered?
What's the weather like on the moon?
That's a really great question. What is the weather like on the moon? What is the weather like on the moon? Very good question. And we already know we're asking a question, so we are going to have what at the end of the sentence?
A question mark.
Great. All right, I think we have room for one more. What do we think? What's another question we could ask?
Why does it have craters?
So we know it has craters, but we don't know yet why it has craters. That's a great question. Why does the moon have craters? All right, this looks great. So let's see if we can answer some of these questions from our story. All right. This book is called The Moon. The night sky. When you look up at the sky on a clear night, You are looking into space. Millions of stars twinkle in the darkness, but the moon looks much brighter than any star. It is the brightest object in the sky. The moon looks big in the night sky. Earth's neighbor. We live on a planet called Earth, a giant rocky ball that spins in space. The moon is our nearest neighbor. The Earth is 4 times bigger than the moon. So wow, Earth is so much bigger than the moon. But the moon is still a long ways away. If you could drive a car to the moon, it would take more than a half of a year. Wow, that's a pretty long time. So think about how long a year is. We're just splitting that right in half. A rocket takes 3 days to get to the moon. Many other planets have moons too. Saturn has many moons, but Earth only just has one. The moon's orbit. The moon is a rocky ball, just like the Earth, and it is always moving. It travels around and around the Earth, following a path called an orbit. So here is a really good picture, right, of what an orbit looks like. So the moon takes 28 days to orbit the Earth. So it's kind of circling around Earth. You can see this dotted path here that's showing how that moon travels.
Ah.
The Earth and the moon belong to the solar system, a big family of planets and moons that travel around the sun.
Ooh.
The light of the moon. The moon looks bright in the dark night sky, but the moon makes no light of its own. It is lit up by the sun. We can only see the part of the moon that is lit up by the sun. The sun's light hits the moon and bounces down to the Earth. To us, this looks like light that's very pale. We call it moonlight. Moonlight is soft and silvery, but on some nights it helps us to see. The shape of the moon. Do we think maybe we're going to be able to answer one of our questions?
I think so.
That title's kind of telling us that. As the moon travels around the Earth, its shape appears to change. Each night it looks a little different than the way it looked the night before. For 14 nights, the moon seems to grow bigger and bigger until it is a huge round ball. Then, for 14 nights, it seems to get smaller and smaller and smaller until we see nothing at all. So, each phase of the moon has a different name. So this phase that we're seeing, where it's really just kind of tiny bit of light there, that's called a crescent moon. But we're noticing that it's getting a little bit bigger. That now becomes a half moon. And when it becomes that big ball of light, it now becomes a full moon. Moon watching. If you use a telescope or binoculars, you can see the moon's surface clearly. How many of you have ever used a telescope before to look in the night sky?
I have.
You have? Oh, nice. The surface is covered with holes called craters. So that's something, remember, we already know. We already know the moon has craters, which are wide and very deep. They were made when huge rocks hurtled through space and crashed into the moon. So if we look at this picture here, these dark patches are flat areas. But where we see this right here, it gets a little bit light. These lighter patches are rocky mountains that are on the moon. And if we look at this picture right here, this is a really great close-up picture of what a crater looks like. On the moon, there is no water or air on the moon. There are no clouds and no wind or rain. Nothing can grow or live there, not a single animal or plant. By day, the moon is boiling hot. By night, it is freezing cold. The moon sky is always going to be black. So how many of you knew that nothing could live on the moon? Show me with your hands. How many of you already knew there is no life on the moon? Okay, so a couple of you. Going to the moon. Astronauts have traveled to the moon in a rocket. They wore space suits to protect them from the heat and the cold and to give them a supply of air. The astronauts took a smaller spacecraft down to the moon itself. The moon landings helped scientists to find out all sorts of things, such as how old the moon is and how it was made. So the astronauts collected rocks for scientists to study. How many of you, with a show of hands, would like to become an astronaut one day? Oh yeah, that would be a fun job. Walking on the moon. Walking on the moon looks fun. The astronauts take giant steps and bounce high off the ground. On Earth, an invisible force called gravity keeps us on the ground. But gravity is not as strong on the moon, so people feel much lighter. So you weigh a lot less on the moon, and that means you can jump a lot higher. Leaving the moon. The astronauts returned to their rocket and traveled back to Earth. They left behind a flag and lots of footprints on the surface. You can see the planet Earth in this picture of the moon. You guys see that little Earth? We do not know when people will return to the moon. Maybe one day, scientists will build a space station there and we will all be able to visit the moon. So, a fun fact, actually, the last time somebody has actually been and stepped on the moon was in 1972. So that was a very long time ago. How many of you think you will be the next astronaut to step on the moon? Oh yeah, I think you guys can do it. All right, so we learned a lot of extra things about the moon today. So let's talk about that. We're gonna go back to our chart here and fill out the rest. So maybe we could answer some of these questions of what we wanted to know. So let's look. What did we learn about how far away the moon is?
It's a half a year away by car.
That's right. So if you were to drive a car, you'd be driving that car for half of a year to get to the moon. That's a long ways away. We're going to say it is a half of a year drive to get to the moon. So we know that is very far away. All right, let's look at our next question. What is the weather like on the moon? What did we learn about that?
It's hot during the day and cold at night.
That's right. Why do we think that? Why do we think during the day it is hot instead of cold?
Because the sun hits it.
Great, great. So it is hot during the moon. Things that can help me spell the word day. D-A. I hear two syllables there. What do we think?
D.
Okay, D.
A.
A. We got that A.
Y.
Y. Very good. We remembered that vowel team, A-Y, at the very end of the word. Great job. So it is hot during the day and cold at night. Great job. All right, let's see see if we can answer this last question. Why does the moon have craters?
Because meteors hit it.
That's right. We know that objects hit the moon and cause those big craters. Meteors hit the moon to cause those craters. That is awesome. Okay. Great job, guys. We seem to really learn a lot about the moon today. So we're going to take what we learned from the story and maybe some things that you talked about here. I want you all to take out your science journal, going back to your seat. And I want you to write me 3 sentences. How many sentences?
3.
3 sentences about what you learned about the moon today. All right? Okay. Go ahead and quietly head back to your seats and go ahead and get out your science journals. Thank you.